Hello, Vision. This is Sam. I texted Pastor earlier today and said, hey, praying for you. Is there anything I can do for you or to be a blessing to Vision? And he said, yeah, preach. And so here I am. I wasn't sure what to preach. I got to thinking about and praying about it and decided just to invite you into my devotions. And so today in my devotions, I was studying in the book of Judges, and I want you to look with me for a few minutes into Judges chapter 7. This is a story of the battle between Gideon and the Midianites and the Amalekites and the people of the east who had all come in against them. And it's really an interesting story, and God is definitely trying to make a point here. And so as we look into this, it says, then Jerubbaal, who is Gideon, and all the people that were with him rose up early and pitched beside the well of Herod, so that the host of the Midianites were on the north side of them by the hill of Moreh in the valley. And so what happens is, in Judges, we've got a time when Israel is pretty fragmented. They keep falling into sin. The tribes, it's kind of every man for themselves, and they're not working together as a nation. Oppressors are coming in because of the sin. In this case, it's the Midianites with some of their helpers, the Amalekites and the children of the east. And they're coming in and just impoverishing the land. The Israelites have to go hide in hills and caves, and they come in and they just take everything of value. They come at harvest time and they steal everything of any value. And it's terrible. And the problem is there's too many Midianites. In this case, we figure there's about 135,000 Midianites that have come up against Israel. That's a crowd. So God leads Gideon to call the people together that he can get together, and he calls them together, and there's 32,000. Now, if you do the math on this, 32,000 Israelites against 135,000 Midianites, then it turns out that there's one Israelite for every 4+ Midianites. So the odds are a little worse than 1 to 4. That's not good odds. If it's one guy against 4 guys, that's not a good thing. But it's interesting, as they prepare for the battle, God comes to Gideon, and he says this, verse 2, Judges 7:2, and the Lord said unto Gideon, the people that are with thee are too many. Now, if I've got 32,000 guys and I'm facing 135,000 guys, I don't think I have too many. But God says there's too many. You say, why are there too many? That's not too many, that's too few. God, you don't have this figured out right. But look what God says. He says, the people that are with thee are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands, lest Israel vaunt themselves against me, saying, mine own hand hath saved me. God said, there's a danger here. And Gideon's like, I know there's a danger. It's 135,000 Midianites. And God said, now I can handle the Midianites. The danger is what you guys are going to do. If I let you 32,000 go up against Midian, and I go before you and I give you the victory, when you come home, you're not going to be praising God. You're going to be saying, yeah, I'm the man. Look at how we did. It was odds were over 4 to 1, and we whooped them. We are the toughest guys in town. And he said, that's not what I want to accomplish. I don't want you to become more self-reliant and more filled with pride. That's not the point. I need you to make the odds longer so that you'll know for sure that it's me. And Gideon's like, okay. And so God tells him, and he goes to the people and he says, okay, everybody that's afraid, go home. I would have gone home, okay? I mean, 32,000, yes, 32 against 135,000, I'm on my way home. Anyway, most of the crowd leaves, 10,000 remain. God says, still too many. Still too many? Now the odds are 13.5 to 1. That's not good. God says, still too many. And so God has him cut it down further until there are only 300 Israelites against 135,000 Midianites. The odds, for those of you that like math, are 450 to 1. Now, when you go into a battle and every guy in your army has to take down 450 of the enemy, that's not good. Okay, that's not a good thing. And so that's exactly where God wanted to put Israel. God wanted to put Israel in a place where there was no way they were going to win this one. Okay, they had no chance of winning it by themselves. Because God was wanting to make a point. It's not about you winning the battle. It's about you depending on me and me winning the battle. Okay? Psalm 44:6, David said, for I will not trust in my bow, neither shall my sword save me, but thou hast saved us from our enemies. David knew that. When he went up against Goliath, he didn't say, I got this. I can handle Goliath. He said, I know God will give me the victory. He trusted God to give him the victory. And that's what he said in Psalm 44:6. I'll not trust in my bow, neither shall my sword save me, but thou hast saved us from our enemies. And so God wants the people of Israel to come to a place where rather than depending on themselves, they're trusting the Lord. In fact, he's putting them in a situation where they have no choice. And that's always a difficult situation. So now Gideon is left with 300 guys. And honestly, his faith is pretty stretched. He's like, I don't know about this. And what we see is that God was incredibly gracious to Gideon. Several times we see when Gideon didn't have the faith to step forward, that God helped him. He strengthened his faith. In this case, he said, go down to the camp of Midian. And they snuck up to the edge of the camp of Midian, and they heard one Midianite talking to another, saying, I had this weird dream. And then the first Midianite says, yeah, you know what? That dream is about Gideon, and he's going to come and defeat us. And Gideon was like, wow, God is speaking words of prophecy through the Midianites to encourage my faith. I know this is the right thing to do. And Gideon then was prepared to step out in faith and take an action. Because, we need to trust in God, for sure. But not only do we need to trust in God, we need to act on that faith. Okay? Faith is not a feeling. Faith is something that provokes action. Okay, so we talk about a lot of things. We talk about love, and love is a feeling in my heart. But if I have real love in my heart, it's going to provoke a reaction. If I have a real love for my wife, then I'm going to do something sweet for her. If I have a real love for the lost, it's not enough to sit in church and say, I have a love for the lost. If I have a love for the lost, I'm going to speak to them about Christ. Okay, if I have a love for the world, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I love the world and sing songs about it. I'm going to go, or at the very least send somebody to go to the world, to take the gospel to them. And just as love, by its very definition, requires action, faith, by its very definition, requires action. Too often we go to church and pastor gets up and preaches and we go, great message, preacher. Wow, I like that. That was outstanding. And then we go home and we don't do anything with it. Faith without action is dead faith, and it's empty, and it does us no good at all. God expects our faith to have action. So God has told Gideon, I want you to trust me. And then we see Gideon, I love this, verse 15, and it was so when Gideon heard the telling of the dream and the interpretation thereof that he worshiped, and he returned into the host of Israel, and he said, arise, for the Lord hath delivered into your hand the host of Midian. He went back and he said, that's it, guys. God is doing it. Let's get up. Let's go. We're ready to attack. He took that step of faith. So often we see and we hear the word of God and we go, oh, we believe in that, but we don't take that step. We need to take that step of faith. And then I want to think a little bit about what Gideon did. It's really interesting. Okay, so he's down to 300 guys. The odds are 450 to 1. So let me see. How am I going to organize my men? See, I'll put the toughest guy right in the front. We're going to sharpen all the swords really good, make sure all the shields are stout. We're going to get together in a really compact group where we can provide. And, if you and I were doing this, probably we would be trying to think of the conventional way of fighting a battle. A lot of times, God doesn't fight battles in conventional ways. And you may have noticed that. When the people of Israel, previous book, Joshua, are going into the promised land, God sent bees before them to drive the inhabitants out. That's kind of funny. God doesn't need an army. He can send bees. Kind of makes me think of our present situation a little bit. God can use anything. And as Gideon goes into this battle, his plan of his equipment and his plan of battle are very odd. He only has 300 guys. There's nothing said about shields or swords at all here. Nothing. Okay? He arms them in the left hand with a lamp and a pitcher covering the lamp so you can't see the light, and in the right hand with a trumpet. Okay, so there he is with a lamp and a trumpet. Those are not the typical things that you use to go into battle with. And so they go out in the middle of the night, and 300 of the guys, he breaks the 300 into 3 groups of 100, and 100 go over there, and another 100 go over there, and then Gideon and his group stay here. And then when he blows on the trumpet, everybody breaks the pitchers. which reveals the light. So suddenly light springs up on every side around the Midianite and Amalekite camp. And all around them, they hear trumpets blowing, and they're like, oh no, at least 3 armies are attacking us. And they all freak out. And the Bible says, and the 300 blew the trumpets, and the Lord set every man's sword against his fellow, even throughout all the host. And so God does a wonderful thing in causing all of the enemies to begin to fall on one another. And so the Israelites, maybe they had a sword in a sheath on their belt. I don't know. The Bible doesn't say anything about it. It says that they held up their lamp and they blew their trumpet. And that's all that it says. And there was a great victory that day. 120,000 Midianites fell. Another 15,000 fell thereafter. And so the whole group of them was taken out. And Israel was freed, and they were freed from their bondage. They were free from their poverty. And they were free to seek God. And Gideon led them spiritually as well as militarily. And so we see a great victory that God gave during this passage. Now, just briefly, I want to bring out several things for you and I to think about. Number one, we all have problems. You know, Gideon had a problem, 135,000 Midianites. You have problems. Hopefully you don't have 135,000 Midianites in your front yard. That would be a problem. But we have problems. The one I guess everybody's talking about and thinking about right now is the coronavirus. That's a problem, okay? An awful lot of people are living with a great deal of fear, and it's really difficult. If you sit in front of the television and watch all of the heart-rending stories, it'll tear you up. So fear is a very real issue for many of us. Secondly, I know there's a lot of people that are out of work. Everything's come to a stop, and we're wondering how are we going to get through. And then thirdly, we could get sick. I heard today that the grandmother of one of my coworkers has died from coronavirus. This is much closer to home than it was a week ago, and it'll probably be closer a week from now than it is now. This is a tough time we're going through. But you know what? Even if it wasn't coronavirus, we all have issues in life. We have problems to face. Now, when we have problems to face, what are we going to do? Well, most of us, I know I do, and probably many of you are the same. Most of us, we rely on our own resources. We're going to figure out how we can use our brains or our know-how or our connections or our finances or our gifts. We're going to find a way out of this. We're going to deal with this. We can handle it. That's the normal thing that we do. That's the thing that this whole chapter is dedicated to. Stop it. Stop it. Okay? So if you're depending on your finances, don't let God get you to a point where he has to reduce you to $300, okay? Or 300 cents or whatever it is. Like he reduced Gideon to 300 soldiers. Let's not wait until we get into desperation to turn to God. But let's go to God and say, God, I realize that my resources aren't sufficient to meet all of these needs. I need your help. And realize that he is our Father. If we know Christ, if we're born again, we can depend on him to bring us through. Let me say something else about this story. Gideon's plan of attack was not at all what anyone would have expected. And as you're facing this problem, usually we're thinking in conventional terms. I've got to fix this problem. I've got to pay this bill. I've got to solve this problem. Okay? When we turn it over to God, pretty frequently, God says, okay, I'll take care of it, but not in the way that you're expecting. I'm going to take care of it in a different way. Now, what will that be? Maybe your goal is wrong. Maybe you're like, I've got to accomplish this goal. And God's like, wrong goal. I've got a different goal. Or maybe you're like, the only way I can accomplish this goal is, and God's like, actually, no, there's another way that would be way better. God might lead you in this crisis when you begin to trust him. He might lead you to come at this in a whole other direction. We have a hard time letting go of this. This is my plan and this is the way it's got to be. But maybe we need to do that. And then we have to act like Gideon acted. We can't just say, okay, I trust God and then do nothing. But God expects us then to go forward, to take action in faith. Faith will always create that action. You know, in the story, God gave a great victory. Do we know for sure what victory God will give you? I know for sure that God will give you a victory. We don't know for sure what it is. I don't know what the future holds for me or for you. None of us do. That's okay. And we don't know. Truth of the matter is, before coronavirus came, we didn't know what the future held for us. We just think we did. We live under an illusion that we've got everything under control. We never did have it under control. We need to realize that my life is in His hands. Over in Romans it says, if I live for the Lord. If I die for the Lord. Whether I live therefore or die, I am the Lord's. And you know what? We can depend on God that no matter what happens, He's going to bring us through. And I think that's really the bottom line of Judges chapter 7 is we need to trust God because He's trustworthy. You can depend on Him. He is there for you. And so put your faith in Him and go forward in confidence. Love you guys. Miss seeing you. Can't wait to that day when we gather together again. God bless. Bye-bye.